Episode 3, Echoes of the Past. The morning brought no comfort to Detective Eli Winters. The town was shrouded in a heavy mist, its narrow streets winding into shadows that seemed to shift and breathe. The previous night's experience lingered in his mind, the voice, the ribbon, the darkness that felt alive. Eli clenched his hands, fighting back the cold that had settled deep in his bones. Determined to unravel the truth, Eli visited Evelyn Marks, the woman who had told him about Lila and the curse that seemed to haunt the woods. She had seemed reluctant to speak further, but Eli sensed she held knowledge that could unlock the mystery. As he reached Evelyn's home, a small, cluttered cottage on the edge of town, he noticed that the windows were covered in dark cloth. Superstitions ran deep here, he thought. He knocked on the door, and Evelyn answered with wary eyes. "Back so soon?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Eli nodded, stepping into the dim, candlelit room. The walls were lined with shelves, each crammed with odd trinkets, dried herbs, old photographs, dusty jars with faded labels. The air was thick with the scent of sage and something else, something acrid and ancient. Evelyn motioned for him to sit and poured him a cup of tea from a steaming kettle. "I don't have many visitors," she said, her voice carrying a note of sorrow. Eli took a sip of the tea, its bitterness startling. "Last night, I heard her again," he said, setting the cup down. "A voice, calling for help, and I found something in the basement." He reached into his pocket and pulled out the pink ribbon he'd found, watching as Evelyn's face paled. She touched the ribbon gingerly, a flicker of pain crossing her features. "This belonged to her," she whispered, her voice heavy with sorrow. "To Lila." Eli leaned forward, sensing that he was close to learning something crucial. "Evelyn, I need to know the truth. What happened to Lila? And what's out there in the woods?" Evelyn took a deep breath as if steeling herself. "The people of Black Hollow have lived here for generations. And so has something else. We call it the Whispering Shadow. It lives in the woods, feeds on the life it steals, leaving nothing but whispers in its wake." Eli's mind raced. "You mean to say it takes people?" She nodded, her eyes clouded with memories. "We've lost many to it over the years. Children, travelers, and even animals sometimes vanish, claimed by whatever dark force lies there. Some believe it's a curse, bound to the land. Others think it's an ancient spirit, a remnant of something older than the town itself." Eli frowned, trying to ground her tale in logic, though he couldn't shake the feeling that something very real was hiding in the woods. But why Lila? Was she just in the wrong place at the wrong time? Evelyn hesitated, a haunted look in her eyes. She was drawn to the woods, obsessed with stories she'd heard from the other children. They dared each other to go deeper into the trees, to find the Whispering Shadow. "I warned her, but she didn't listen." Her voice trembled, and Eli sensed the weight of guilt hanging over her. "It's not your fault, Evelyn. But I need to find out more. Is there any way to stop it?" She shook her head, staring into her tea. "We tried once, years ago. There was a ritual, a binding. But it didn't work. It only grew stronger, and now, it's angrier than ever." Eli absorbed her words, his resolve hardening. He wasn't about to abandon his investigation, not when lives were at stake. But before he could ask another question, Evelyn looked up, her face pale. "There's someone else you should speak to," she whispered. "Someone who knows more than I do about the dark things in Black Hollow." Evelyn sent Eli to the outskirts of town, to a small, neglected house on the edge of the Black Hollow woods. The man who lived there, Jasper Doone, was a reclusive figure, known only for his strange rituals and his rumored ability to commune with spirits. Most of the town considered him mad, but Evelyn insisted he was the key to understanding the Whispering Shadow. As Eli approached the house, he noticed strange symbols carved into the fence posts surrounding the yard. The house itself was shrouded in shadow, despite the faint light that managed to penetrate the fog. Eli's hand hesitated on the doorknob, a cold dread creeping up his spine. He knocked, and after a moment, the door opened. Jasper was a wiry man with long, unkempt hair and piercing eyes that seemed to see straight through him. Without a word, Jasper motioned for Eli to enter. Inside, the house was dim, the walls adorned with symbols and sketches of the woods. Maps of Black Hollow covered one wall, each one marked with small, precise X's at various points. "I know why you're here," Jasper said, his voice low and rough. "You're here for her." "For Lila." Eli's eyes widened. "How did you know?" Jasper gave him a grim smile. "I hear her too. She's one of many trapped here. Lost souls that the shadow has taken." Eli swallowed hard. "Can you help me understand what's happening here?" Jasper took a seat, gesturing for Eli to do the same. "The Whispering Shadow is not a spirit, not in the way people think. It's a force, ancient and malevolent, feeding on fear, pain, and loss. It's bound to the woods, drawn to those who step too close." Eli leaned in, his mind racing with questions. "But why does it take people? What does it want?" Jasper looked away, his face grim. "It's drawn to certain people, those with something unresolved, something broken inside. It lures them in, offers them a chance to find what they've lost, only to consume them in the end." Eli's mind flashed back to the voice he'd heard, the whispering plea for help. "Then why haven't you tried to stop it?" Jasper's face darkened. "Many have tried, Detective. It cannot be stopped by any means we know. The shadow is part of the land, but there might be a way to free those it has claimed." Eli's heart raced. "How?" Jasper paused, his eyes locking onto Eli's. "A ritual. Dangerous, forbidden, and requiring a powerful sacrifice. If we attempt it, you'll be risking your life, and you'll need to confront the shadow itself." Eli didn't flinch. "What do I have to do?" Jasper nodded, a grim respect in his gaze. "Meet me at midnight, at the edge of the woods. I'll prepare the ritual, but you'll need to be strong. The shadow will try to break you, to trap you as it did with Lila. If you hesitate, if you falter, it will consume you." Eli spent the rest of the day preparing, his mind filled with visions of the dark woods and the faint whispers that had haunted him since his arrival. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was stepping into something far beyond his understanding, yet he knew he couldn't turn back. As midnight approached, Eli made his way to the edge of Black Hollow Woods, where Jasper waited, surrounded by candles arranged in a careful circle. The air was thick with tension, the woods darker than he had ever seen them, as if they were swallowing the light itself. Jasper motioned for Eli to stand within the circle, handing him a small vial filled with a dark liquid. "Drink this. It will allow you to see the shadow as it truly is. But be warned, it will also make you vulnerable." Eli took the vial, hesitating only a moment before downing its contents. The liquid burned as it went down, filling him with a strange warmth that quickly turned to cold. Jasper began to chant, his voice low and rhythmic, echoing through the silence. The air grew heavy, the darkness around them thickening until Eli felt as though he was suffocating. The trees loomed closer, their branches stretching out like skeletal fingers. Then, he saw it. A shadow moved at the edge of the trees, dark and shifting, its form flickering between shapes, sometimes a figure, a formless mass, always watching. Its eyes glowed faintly, hollow and endless, filled with a hunger that chilled Eli to his core. The whispering started, faint at first, then growing louder, a cacophony of voices overlapping, each one pleading, crying, calling for help. Eli covered his ears, but the voices only grew louder, pressing into his mind, filling him with a despair so deep it felt like drowning. "Stay strong, Detective," Jasper's voice cut through the noise, steady and commanding. "Do not listen to it. Focus on Lila." Eli forced himself to concentrate, to block out the other voices, focusing only on the faint echo of Lila's whisper. He could feel her presence, distant but real, trapped somewhere within the darkness. He took a step forward, feeling the pull of the shadow trying to draw him in, to trap him as it had so many others. "Help me," Lila's voice was faint but clear, cutting through the darkness like a thread of light. Eli reached out, feeling her presence grow stronger. He could see her now, a faint figure in the distance, her face pale and her eyes wide with fear. She looked at him, her gaze filled with desperation. With a final surge of strength, Eli reached for her, feeling her hand close around his. But as he did, the shadow roared, a wave of darkness surging toward him, filled with anger and hunger. "Hold on," he shouted, gripping her hand tightly. The darkness closed in, a wall of shadow engulfing them, pulling them deeper, as Eli felt himself slipping away, his mind fraying at the edges. But he held on, refusing to let go, determined to bring her back. And then, with a final scream, the darkness shattered. Eli awoke on the forest floor, his body aching and his mind foggy. He looked around, disoriented, and saw Jasper standing over him, a look of relief on his face. "You did it," Jasper said quietly. "You brought her back."